Supreme Court refuses to entertain plea by 14 opposition parties. Petition withdrawn by opposition after Supreme Court's refusal to entertain it. Plea dismissed as withdrawn by Supreme Court. Supreme Court asked the opposition parties to come back to court citing a specific case. Supreme Court says abstract guidelines cannot be laid down in this particular manner. It's a big development and a setback coming in for the opposition right there. Supreme Court refusing to entertain plea by 14 opposition parties. The petition has been withdrawn by the opposition now after Supreme Court's refusal to entertain the petition. The petition was dismissed as withdrawn by the Supreme Court. In fact, the apex court has asked opposition parties to now come back to court citing a specific case, which means that they would have to cite specific cases, and Supreme Court says abstract guidelines cannot be laid down in this manner. We'll get our reporters to join us in moments from now on this big story that we're breaking at the moment. The petition for now stands to be withdrawn because the Supreme Court for now does not want to entertain it. But having said that, the Supreme Court has said that they have to come back. That is, the opposition parties, the 14 opposition parties, have to come back to the court, citing a specific case. And Supreme Court has further gone on to say that these kind of abstract guidelines cannot be laid down in this manner. So 14 opposition parties filed this particular petition in the Supreme Court, and this was on the back of allegation of misuse of probe agencies, and the Supreme Court was to hear this particular plea of the 14 opposition parties today, but they have just refused to entertain this. In fact, just to give you a background of the petition, it cited that many cases of CBI Enforcement Directorate were against the leaders of opposition parties only. Anisha now joins us. Anisha, what is your sense and reading of this particular order? Does this mean that the opposition parties are now going to be filing separate petitions on specific cases where the CBI Enforcement Directorate has targeted the opposition leaders, and then probably the Supreme Court will hear it? How is it going to work out?
Well, Charity, from what the discussion has happened in the Supreme Court, and we tried to speak to Mr. Singhvi also outside of the court, what seems to now need to happen is that the parties will have to bring in specific examples, and this is something that the Chief Justice himself asked also, that is there any specific example, or you can tell us of a political leader being targeted to silence them. Of course, Mr. Singhvi's stand in the court has been that it will be very difficult to raise that argument in an individual case, because this is, after all, an issue of mass arrest. It's an issue of targeting of political opposition, and that is where the problem comes in, because the statistics that were shown by the political parties to the Supreme Court, they are very startling. They do show a clear example of how ED and CBI have been filing cases against opposition leaders, how ED and CBI have been arresting opposition leaders. But as the Chief Justice himself pointed out, the statistics on the lack of conviction is not something that is only for the ED and CBI. Generally also, and I'm quoting the Chief Justice here, the conviction rate in the country is abysmal, and this is not just for PMLA cases but for all kinds of cases, and therefore the question of the Supreme Court interfering in a matter like this is very difficult. Now, the court has made it stand clear that we cannot pass a generalized direction that you don't arrest people, because corruption cases or fraud cases, etc., affect people in general, and that is a point that the court is making. But for the opposition parties, it is very clear that they are going to continue raising this issue of the misuse of the ED and CBI. They are going to once again bring in the statistics. They will, of course, now
Bharatiya Janata Party is also joining us on the phone line. Shehzad, how do you respond to this? This is, of course, a setback coming for the 14 opposition parties. But Abhishek Manu Singhvi has argued that there's been a humongous jump in the cases if you compare from pre-2014 to post-2014 of the opposition party.
Chaiti, now all these arguments have been put before the Supreme Court, and I hope that the opposition parties won't say that there is vindictiveness that is coming in from the courts as well. I think it is a supreme setback and a tamacha for those who think they have the right to do corruption. They have a jantad adhikar of doing bhrashtachar, and then when the courts take action, then they say atyachar, atyachar. I think this has been completely now rubbish, that they have to also face the law. They can't get immunity from corruption for just because they oppose BJP or oppose Prime Minister Modi as far as the cases are concerned. Well, in the last 9 years, they have not been able to prove that there has been any amount of vendetta or any malicious prosecution. In fact, most of these people are in jail because courts have kept them there. And look at the hypocrisy. Congress says Satyendra Jain pe karwai theek hai, Manish Sisodia pe theek hai, but when it happens on Sonia Gandhi, it is galat. So this kind of hypocritical behavior can't be done, and they are all equal before the law.
I guess what the petitioners were basically, Shehzad, asking were for pre-arrest and post-arrest bail guidelines. That was, from my understanding, what they were asking. And now the Supreme Court has asked them to come back with specific cases. So will you be able to say the same in case the court ends up entertaining the specific cases?
No, every person who is aggrieved or not aggrieved has a right to go to court in a specific individual case. They anyways do. K. Kavita went to quash the summons, or Tejasvi Yadav went for quashing of his summons. They didn't get released. The point is that as a class, they feel that they are entitled to special treatment just because they happen to be from the parivar of such. So Tejasvi Yadav and others think that they can indulge in corruption and then they can have a special privilege that no other person who engages in such criminal acts gets. So this kind of double standards should not be there. They have to face the law just like any other person who indulges in corruption. Only 3% of cases are against MPs, MLAs. Why should they get a special preference? Everyone is equal before the law. If you have done corruption, you have to answer for it. You don't get immunity. That is what they were trying for. And I think this VVIP mindset, entitlement to
And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And
And you know, Shehzad, the Supreme Court has said what the Supreme Court has said. And you and I are nobody to, you know, refute any of that. But my question here is very, very different, which is an offshoot of what we are discussing. That when was the last time a major BJP leader was interrogated by the CBI or the Enforcement Directorate?
No, this is not the right way to ask this, because if my party people are not doing corruption, is it the fault of the party that leaders in my party don't do corruption? So this is, you know, it is to say that because I have to balance my editorial line, I have to take both sides of the story. This is not an editorial line. If somebody does corruption, they will be pursued for that corruption. If BJP leaders are honest and they work under leadership of Prime Minister Modi without doing corruption, then why must the agencies target them? But yes, if they do any kind of mistake, even they are not spared. There was a raid on an ED, or ED raid on the Surat leader, I remember. There was action on the leader from Karnataka when the agencies caught his son with amount of money. So wherever the corruption takes place, irrespective of party lines, action is taken. But yes, we cannot take action against those who are not indulging in corruption, and those who indulge in corruption can't say that, no, we have a license to do corruption because we abuse the BJP.
No, you're absolutely right now. Now, would you call this a big setback coming in for the opposition parties? Is there anything you want to tell the opposition parties right now? You've said enough, but if there is anything more.
No, this is a supreme setback for those who think ED means entitlement of the dynasty. There is no entitlement of dynasty to do corruption. Corruption karoge, to uske liye jaanch face karoge. This is Modi Sarkar. The agencies are free and fair to pursue any kind of action that they feel they must against those who indulge in corruption. It is not a caged parrot like it was under the Congress party. But yes, because action is being taken on corrupt, they can't get together and make an alliance of corruption and then say that we will have a right against any action against corruption because we oppose Prime Minister Modi or we oppose the BJP.
All right, Shehzad, as always, lovely talking to you. Thanks for joining us on this particular broadcast. We're getting breaking news coming in.